Emma stumbled onto the crowded bus just as the doors hissed shut, her breath still heavy from the run. The weight of a double shift clung to her like an invisible chain, every step betraying the exhaustion she tried so hard to mask. At her side, little Lucas gripped her hand tightly, his tiny shoes scuffed and worn, the laces fraying where they had been tied too many times. He looked around with wide, curious eyes, but his mother's were fixed downward, avoiding the gaze of strangers. The bus hummed with quiet monotony. People sat in stiff silence, faces illuminated by the glow of their phones or hidden behind weary stares at the floor. No one spoke, no one smiled. It was the kind of silence that didn't offer peace, only distance. Emma sank into an empty seat, pulling Lucas close to her side. She smoothed his hair with a trembling hand, trying to keep her fatigue hidden, but her pale face and tired eyes told a story she could not disguise. She glanced out the window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold, wishing for a life where she didn't have to count every dollar or fight every day to keep going. Lucas leaned against her, humming softly to himself, unaware of the heaviness pressing down on his mother. In that crowded bus filled with strangers, Emma felt achingly alone, as though the world had forgotten her, but she carried on, because she had no choice. Emma reached into her purse, her fingers brushing against loose change. She pulled the coins out and let them rest in her palm, counting them quietly under her breath. A sigh escaped her lips when she realized the truth, there wasn't enough for groceries tonight. She clenched her fist, hoping Lucas hadn't noticed, but children see more than adults often admit. His small eyes lingered on the coins, then lifted to her face with a softness that felt older than his years. The bus rattled along the darkened streets, its passengers still lost in silence. A man in a suit stared blankly at his phone, earbuds sealing him off from the world. A young woman near the back tapped her fingers nervously against her bag. An elderly couple sat side by side, their hands folded neatly on their laps. They all seemed close enough to touch, yet so far away, each locked inside their private worlds. Emma forced a smile and tucked the coins back into her purse, as if to pretend the struggle wasn't real. She brushed a strand of hair from her face and looked down at Lucas. "We'll be okay," she whispered, her voice steady but her heart trembling. Lucas nodded, trying to believe her, though his gaze drifted again to his worn shoes. The silence of the bus felt heavier now, not just from the absence of words, but from the quiet burden Emma carried alone. And still, no one seemed to notice. The bus jolted over a bump, and the coins in Emma's purse clinked softly, a sound that seemed to echo louder than it should have. She adjusted Lucas's backpack on her lap, but before she could settle, a gentle voice broke the silence. From across the aisle, an elderly man leaned forward, his weathered hand holding out a few folded bills. His eyes, kind and steady, met hers. Emma's cheeks flushed. She shook her head quickly, whispering, "I can't." But the man only smiled, placing the money on the edge of her seat before leaning back without another word. For a moment, she sat frozen, torn between pride and need. Then, as if his gesture had unlocked something unspoken, a teenage girl pulled a granola bar from her bag and leaned over to hand it to Lucas. His eyes widened, a shy smile spreading across his face as he accepted it. A young father a few rows back reached into his wallet and produced a grocery store voucher, holding it out with a simple nod. One by one, strangers who had moments ago been wrapped in their own silence began to shift, to move, to give. It wasn't dramatic, no speeches, no grand gestures. Just quiet, ordinary kindness spilling from unexpected places. Emma's throat tightened as she looked around, realizing the bus that had felt so cold and distant was slowly transforming into something else, something warmer. She whispered a shaky, "Thank you," but the words hardly seemed enough. Emma's hands trembled as she gathered the bills, the voucher, and the small snack Lucas now clutched like treasure. Her chest ached, not from weariness this time, but from something overwhelming and unfamiliar, hope. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the faces around her. She had walked onto this bus invisible, just another tired mother struggling to make it through the day. But now, she felt seen. Lucas tugged at her sleeve, his little voice breaking the hush. "Mom," he whispered, his eyes darting from the man with kind eyes to the girl with the granola bar, "they're helping us." Emma pulled him close, her throat tightening as she nodded. The bus, once filled with strangers who avoided each other's gaze, was now connected by invisible threads of compassion. The air felt lighter, warmer, as if kindness itself had shifted the walls around them. Every person who had reached out sat quietly, not demanding recognition, not asking for thanks. Their small acts wove together into something powerful, something Emma would never forget. She pressed her lips to Lucas's hair and closed her eyes for a moment, letting the weight of generosity sink in. Her tears finally spilled, not of shame, but of gratitude. In that ordinary ride home, Emma discovered that kindness could turn silence into connection, and strangers into family. And for everyone watching, the bus no longer felt like just a ride, it felt like proof of something greater than themselves. Emma wrapped her arms around Lucas, holding him as if she could shield him not only from the struggles of life, but also from the weight of her own emotions. Her voice was soft, almost trembling, as she whispered into his ear, "Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes love doesn't need a language." Lucas looked up at her with a smile, his small hands tightening around the granola bar as though it were the most precious gift in the world. The bus continued its steady journey through the night, headlights casting fleeting shadows across the faces of those who had chosen to care. No one spoke, but there was no longer silence, only a quiet understanding, a shared warmth that needed no words. The elderly man leaned back with a peaceful expression, the teenage girl returned to her music, and the young father rocked his child gently. Life moved forward, but something unspoken lingered in the air. Emma's heart felt lighter than it had in years. For the first time in a long while, she didn't just carry her burdens, she carried hope. The kindness of strangers had reminded her that even in a world often filled with distance and struggle, compassion could break through. As the bus rolled on, she realized that what bound them together that night wasn't conversation or familiarity. It was the simple, powerful truth that caring, in its purest form, was a language everyone could understand.